Niner faithful, there are two massive stories developing around this football team right now, and both of them cut straight to the heart of the single biggest question facing this franchise heading into 2026. Can the San Francisco 49ers go from being a solid playoff team to a legitimate Super Bowl contender again? The first story involves four specific players already on this roster whose individual development could single-handedly determine the ceiling of this entire season. The second involves a name that has the entire NFL talking and could fundamentally reshape this defense if the front office is willing to accept significant risk to make it happen. Let us break down both, because the stakes here are genuinely enormous. Most projections heading into 2026 have the 49ers landing somewhere around 10 wins with a realistic path to the playoffs. That outcome would represent a solid, respectable season. But solid and respectable is not the standard this organization holds itself to. And the difference between a good playoff team and a true championship contender almost always comes down to specific individual players taking the leap that elevates an entire unit around them. Four names deserve real attention heading into training camp, because each of them represents a genuine swing factor capable of moving this team's ceiling dramatically in either direction. Ricky Pearsall sits at the top of this list, and the stakes for him heading into year 3 could not be higher. First-round picks eventually have to justify their draft position, and this feels like exactly the moment in Pearsall's career where that justification needs to happen. The talent has never been the question mark. Every time he has been healthy and on the field, the route running, the separation ability, and the overall skill set that justified investing a first-round pick in him have all been clearly visible. The problem has been availability, plain and simple. If Pearsall can finally string together a genuinely healthy season, the opportunity sitting in front of him is enormous. With Mike Evans now drawing significant defensive attention as one of the most respected receivers in the entire league, Pearsall stands to inherit exactly the kind of favorable, less defended matchups that a talented number 2 receiver dreams about. If he capitalizes on those opportunities, Brock Purdy's entire job becomes easier. The passing game becomes significantly more dangerous and less predictable, and this offense reaches a different level entirely. Marquis Singleton, the safety who does not get nearly enough national attention given his role in this defense, represents the second name on this list. Watching him play reveals a player with genuinely strong fundamentals. He is consistently in the right position. He defends the run well, he understands coverage responsibilities and route concepts at a level that shows real football intelligence. But there has been one consistent issue holding him back from becoming a true difference maker rather than simply a competent, reliable presence: finishing plays. Too many times last season, Singleton found himself in exactly the right position with a legitimate opportunity to make a play on the football, only to watch the ball arrive and fail to convert that positioning into an actual turnover or pass breakup. That specific gap between being positioned correctly and actually finishing the play is what separates good safeties from genuine playmakers. The encouraging sign for 49ers fans is what Singleton showed during the wild-card playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, where he looked like a player capable of becoming one of the best safeties on this entire roster. If he can carry that level of performance consistently into the regular season, this secondary immediately becomes a stronger, more dangerous unit, and a defense that desperately needs actual playmakers rather than just players who are simply in proximity to the football gets exactly what it has been missing. Connor Colby is the third name, and while technically this conversation applies to whoever ultimately wins the starting left guard competition, Colby currently appears to have the inside track on that job heading into training camp. The significance of this specific position battle deserves more attention than it typically receives. Left guard was a genuine problem area for this offense last season, with the unit consistently struggling against physical, aggressive defensive fronts in ways that disrupted the entire offensive rhythm. Protection broke down at critical moments. Running lanes that should have been there simply were not. Nobody is demanding Colby become an all-pro guard or dominate every single snap he takes. The expectation is far simpler and far more achievable. Be reliable. Be consistent. Win the battles he is supposed to win and handle his fundamental responsibilities in both pass protection and the run game. If Colby delivers that level of baseline competence, the positive impact spreads throughout this entire offense. Brock Purdy benefits from cleaner pockets. The running game benefits from more consistently available lanes. The play calling itself opens up because the coaching staff no longer has to scheme around a known weakness. Sometimes championship-caliber teams are not built through splashy superstar additions. Sometimes they are built when a previously identified weakness simply stops being a weakness. And Connor Colby has a direct opportunity to be exactly that kind of quiet, foundational difference-maker. Romello Height rounds out this list as perhaps the single most intriguing name because the pressure on this rookie edge rusher is both significant and refreshingly simple to define. The 49ers desperately need additional pass rush production, and Height's job is not complicated. He does not need to be a complete, well-rounded defensive end immediately. He does not need to excel against the run from day one. His primary responsibility is straightforward, get after the quarterback. For years, opposing offenses have been able to focus an enormous amount of attention and resources specifically on containing Nick Bosa, using double teams, extra blockers, and constant protection adjustments to neutralize his impact. What this defense has been missing is a player who can consistently make offenses pay for dedicating that much attention to one player. Height showed legitimate, real pass-rushing ability during his final collegiate season at Texas Tech, and the structural opportunity in front of him is genuinely favorable. With offenses forced to account for both Bosa on the edge and Osa Odigizua creating interior pressure, Height could find himself in exactly the kind of advantageous one-on-one situations that allow talented young pass rushers to produce immediately. Potential alone means nothing until it translates into actual sacks and pressures. But if Height delivers on that potential, this defense becomes significantly more dangerous than it currently projects to be. These four players, Ricky Pearsall, Marquise Singleton, Connor Colby, and Romello Height, represent the difference between this team simply being good in 2026 and this team becoming genuinely, legitimately dangerous heading into the postseason. Now let us shift to the second major story generating real conversation throughout the Niner faithful right now. According to Raiders insider Hondo Carpenter on the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast, the San Francisco 49ers are reportedly nuclear hot in their interest in Las Vegas Raiders star edge rusher Maxx Crosby. And if that report grabs your attention immediately, you are far from alone. Because the football logic behind this potential pairing is genuinely obvious. The 49ers finished the 2025 season with only 20 sacks, the fewest total in the entire National Football League. For a franchise whose defensive identity has historically been built around dominant defensive line play, that number is genuinely shocking and represents the single most glaring weakness on this entire roster. Now picture Maxx Crosby lining up opposite Nick Bosa. That is the dream scenario every Niner fan has already pictured in their mind the moment this rumor surfaced. Crosby is a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, a relentless, productive, genuinely disruptive pass rusher who would instantly create one of the most feared edge-rushing duos in the entire league, especially when combined with the interior pressure Osa Odigizua is already projected to provide. On paper, this single move could completely transform the defensive identity of this football team. But once you move past the initial excitement, the real complications start to surface, and they deserve full and honest examination. The financial commitment alone is enormous. Crosby signed a 3-year extension worth $106.5 million with the Raiders in 2025 and remains under contract through 2029. His cap charges project to approximately $36 million in 2026 and roughly $30 million in 2027. The 49ers did create some additional flexibility by restructuring Nick Bosa's own contract earlier this offseason, clearing more than $17 million in cap space. But stacking Crosby's enormous cap number on top of Bosa's already significant future commitments would represent an extraordinarily large investment concentrated at a single position group. Then there is the draft compensation question, and the Raiders are not simply going to hand over a player of Crosby's caliber without receiving substantial value in return. Any realistic trade scenario would almost certainly require premium draft assets, potentially multiple high-value selections, representing a significant cost for any acquiring organization, regardless of how badly that team needs pass rush help. Age is the next factor that has to be weighed honestly. Crosby turns 29 later this year, which is not old by any reasonable standard. But when you are talking about surrendering major draft capital and absorbing a massive contract, every front office has to seriously evaluate exactly how many elite, productive seasons realistically remain. You would be investing in a player who is undeniably still in his athletic prime, but who is also undeniably closer to 30 than 25. And that math matters when projecting the full value of any long-term contract commitment. And then comes perhaps the single biggest concern hanging over this entire conversation: Crosby's health. He underwent surgery on a torn meniscus in his left knee back in January after finishing the 2025 season on injured reserve, and reports specifically indicated this was a meniscus repair procedure rather than a simpler, less invasive cleanup, meaning the recovery timeline and process carries genuinely more significant risk and uncertainty. Here is the detail that should give every 49ers fan real pause before getting too far ahead of themselves with excitement. According to reports, the Baltimore Ravens previously had an entire trade structure in place to acquire Crosby, reportedly involving first-round picks in both the 2026 and 2027 drafts. That deal reportedly fell completely apart after specific concerns emerged during Crosby's physical examination. Think carefully about what that detail actually represents. An organization was willing to surrender multiple first-round draft picks for this player, and then specifically backed away after their medical evaluation raised red flags. That is exactly the kind of information every front office across the league has to seriously weigh before committing significant resources to acquire him. None of this means Crosby cannot return to playing at an elite level once fully recovered, but it absolutely means there is real, substantive risk involved in this potential transaction, and the entire conversation ultimately comes down to a genuine risk versus reward calculation. The reward side of that equation is obvious and enormous. A fully healthy Maxx Crosby lined up alongside Nick Bosa would fundamentally change the identity and the danger level of this entire defense, and it would represent a direct, aggressive response to an NFC West division that just became significantly tougher after the Los Angeles Rams added Myles Garrett to their own roster. Making this move would send an unmistakable message that San Francisco is fully committed to winning immediately. But the risk side of the equation, the contract complexity, the draft compensation, the concerning knee injury, and the medical red flags that already derailed one significant trade attempt is substantial enough that many people across the league currently believe a deal involving these two specific teams is unlikely to happen in the immediate near term. The more realistic path forward likely involves continued monitoring of this situation as the season progresses. If the Raiders struggle and fall out of playoff contention as the year unfolds, Their willingness to actually move Crosby could increase significantly, particularly if rebuilding around younger, more affordable talent becomes the organizational priority. If the 49ers start winning games but continue to struggle generating consistent quarterback pressure, their own urgency to find a solution could similarly increase. That convergence of circumstances, a struggling Raiders team and a 49ers team needing immediate pass rush help, is when serious trade conversations would realistically begin to develop. Right now, the football fit makes complete sense on paper. The actual mechanics of executing this transaction remain genuinely complicated. When you step back and consider both of these major storylines together, they reveal something important about exactly where this 49ers organization currently stands. This roster still has plenty of talent capable of competing at a high level. Brock Purdy remains a quarterback capable of winning football games. Stars like Nick Bosa, Mike Evans, and Osa Odigizua give this roster a genuine foundation. But the path back to a Super Bowl is not going to be determined by any single factor in isolation. It requires multiple things happening simultaneously. The young players on this list, Pearsall, Singleton, Colby, and Height, all need to develop and deliver on their individual potential. The pass rush needs to improve dramatically, whether through internal development or a significant outside addition like Crosby. The front office needs to continue making smart, calculated decisions, and the roster needs to stay genuinely healthy across a full 17-game season. That convergence of variables is exactly what makes the 2026 season feel so fascinating and so consequential for this organization's trajectory. There is legitimate reason for real optimism. There are also legitimate questions that remain genuinely unanswered heading into training camp. Niner faithful, the floor is yours, and we want your honest take right now. Which of these four players, Ricky Pearsall, Marquise Singleton, Connor Colby, or Romello Height, do you believe is most critical to this team's ceiling in 2026? And would you personally be willing to trade significant draft capital to bring Maxx Crosby to San Francisco given everything we now know about his contract, his age, and his knee? Drop everything you have got in the comments section below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel because this offseason continues to deliver genuinely fascinating storylines every single week. Let's go Niners!